You thought she loved you. But what if she only loved how you made her feel? You gave her your loyalty, your heart, your soul. Yet the more you gave, the less you mattered. Why? Schopenhauer saw through the illusion. What you call love, he called a trap. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. She doesn't love you. She loves the way you make her feel. The rush of attention, the comfort of safety, the warmth of your devotion. You thought you were special. You believed your kindness, your patience, your unwavering loyalty would mean something. But the truth is brutal. The more you gave, the more invisible you became. You became easy to reach, easy to please, easy to ignore. And in that moment, something shifted. You stopped being a man in her eyes and became a tool, a placeholder, a utility. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer didn't hate women. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't jaded. He was clear-eyed. He saw what others refused to admit, and he gave it a name. A trap laid by nature, not evil, not calculated, but biological. An evolutionary illusion, engineered not by her, but by nature itself, from the subtle tilt of her head to the softness in her voice, from the warmth of her touch to the tears she sheds when it matters most. It's not manipulation, it's not acting, it's instinct. A natural system designed to bind men emotionally and make them serve without ever realizing they've surrendered. And here's the cruel twist. Nature does not care about your feelings. It doesn't care about your heartbreak. It doesn't reward your sacrifice. It doesn't recognize your poetry or your late-night promises. And once you finally see the pattern, you can't unsee it. That pedestal you placed her on, it was built from fantasy. That love you believed was sacred and pure, it was never unconditional. It was transactional. But don't mistake this for malice. This doesn't make her evil. It makes her human. Just as men are driven to protect, to provide, to pursue, women are driven to attract, to secure, and to survive. The tragedy is this: when you ignore this fundamental truth, you don't just lose your perspective, you hand over your power. This message is not about resentment. It's about awakening. It's about seeing what no one else dares to say. Because the man who remains blind to female nature will always be ruled by the illusion of love. You see her across the room. Red lips, soft skin, delicate features. She glows in the warm light like something out of a dream. Your heart skips. Your pulse quickens. You think, she's the one. But what you're feeling, that rush, that deep, aching pull, it's not love, it's biology. It's instinct. It's nature hijacking your mind. Schopenhauer didn't romanticize that feeling. He dissected it. To him, beauty wasn't divine. It wasn't soulful. It was bait designed by evolution to pull you in. He called it the will to life, a force that uses beauty to manipulate men into serving the species. That perfect skin, that enchanting voice, that flawless curve of her smile. It's not for you. It's not even her. It's nature, using her to further its own agenda. That overwhelming need you feel to chase, to win her, to give up everything for her, it's not sacred. It's not spiritual. It's a trap. A code written into your DNA, commanding you to kneel, even when it costs you everything. Schopenhauer observed something few men are willing to face. What we call love is often just desire in disguise. You aren't falling for who she is. You're falling for what she represents. Youth, fertility, softness, validation. And the most brutal part? She doesn't even have to try. Her smile feels personal, but it's been shown to hundreds before you. Her charm feels rare, but it's biological, not intentional. It's not deception. It's design. And now, let me tell you a story. A story about a man named Ethan. A man who gave everything and lost himself in the process. Ethan was a good man. He was loyal. He was gentle. He was emotionally available, the kind of man women say they want. He met a girl who, at first, seemed perfect. He opened doors for her, walked on the outside of the sidewalk, remembered the little things. He texted her, "Good morning," every single day. He listened, not just heard, but listened to every word she said. And for a little while, it worked. She laughed more. She glowed in his presence. She seemed to adore him. Ethan thought he had found her, his soulmate, the woman worth sacrificing for. But then, slowly, something changed. She grew colder, more distant. Her replies became shorter, slower, more distracted. She stopped lighting up when he walked into the room, stopped initiating, stopped caring. And Ethan, he tried harder. He doubled down, more texts, more attention, more effort. But the more he gave, the less she respected him. Why? Because Ethan did not understand nature. He thought being nice was the key to attraction, that loyalty and consistency would win the game. But nature doesn't reward nice. It rewards strength, it rewards confidence, it rewards the man who doesn't need validation to feel whole. Ethan was playing a game he didn't even know had rules, and he was losing because modern men have been raised on lies, on Disney fantasies, on rom-coms, on Instagram quotes about soulmates and the one. But Schopenhauer saw it for what it really was, a dangerous illusion. Love is a metaphysical deception, he wrote. It tricks us into thinking we're choosing freely, when in fact, we're being used. You don't fall in love. You fall into programming, that magnetic pull toward her body. That sudden sense that you die for her, that's not love. That's the will to life acting through you. It's not about happiness. It's about reproduction, her beauty, her sweetness. They're not conscious traps. They're mechanisms, tools honed by evolution to ensure her survival, not yours. Schopenhauer said, "A woman's charm is the mask of nature, a mask worn only long enough to ensnare a man. And once the illusion fades, reality hits like a brick wall. Here's the tragedy. Men today mistake attention for affection. They confuse desire for destiny. They think, she chose me, so I must be valuable. But the hard truth? She didn't choose you because you're valuable. She chose you because you're useful, useful to her needs, useful to her emotional voids, useful to her survival. And the second you stop being useful, the charm fades, the warmth disappears, the affection dries up. Because beauty attracts. But beauty doesn't commit. It doesn't promise loyalty. It doesn't promise depth. It doesn't owe you anything. Schopenhauer saw it all, with brutal clarity. Men live in a dream. Women are part of that dream. But the dream? It's not real. And every time you obsess over her beauty, every time you pedestal her for being different, every time you imagine a future based on your feelings, you fall into the very trap Schopenhauer warned about. You stop being a sovereign man, and you become a means to an end. You work harder, you dress better, you earn more, all to win a glance, a smile, a moment. And here's the twisted part. She doesn't even have to ask. Nature speaks for her. Her beauty does the heavy lifting. And your instincts? Blind, ancient, unquestioning. They obey. So what do? You wake up. You detach your value from her attention. You stop treating desire like it's destiny. Schopenhauer never said love was impossible. He said unexamined. Love is dangerous. When you understand the code behind your desire, you take back control. You stop chasing shadows. You stop serving biology. And you start seeing clearly. You can admire her beauty. You can even respect her nature. But you must never, ever worship the illusion. Because the moment you do, you're no longer the man, you're the prey. Why do men fall for the illusion? Why do men kneel, not just to beauty, but to the illusion behind it? The answer isn't simple. It's not just biology. It's also psychology, evolution, and centuries of cultural programming, all working together to pull the strings until the man becomes the puppet. Let's break it down. From the moment you're born, the world starts writing your script. Disney teaches you about the helpless damsel. Hollywood gives her a halo. Fairy tales promise you that if you love her enough, if you give enough, if you're good enough, then you will be enough. But here's the truth. That's where the trap begins. It starts with idealization. You don't see her. You see a fantasy. Wearing her face, your brain fills in the blanks. She's kind. She's pure. She understands me. She's different. But that's not her reality. That's your projection. You don't fall in love with who she is. You fall in love with who you need her to be. A soft place in a hard world. A salve for your loneliness. A quiet fantasy to silence your chaos. But the moment you project that fantasy onto someone, you stop seeing them clearly. You ignore the red flags. You rationalize the distance. You excuse the coldness. Because the second the goddess shows her flaws, the illusion begins to crack. And most men, they'd rather bleed than wake up. Psychologists call this projective idealization. It's a defense mechanism. And it's deadly, because it sets you up to worship a dream and suffer when it inevitably disappears. But that's just one layer. Beneath psychology is biology, the evolutionary code evolution designed men to chase, to compete, to provide, to sacrifice. Why? Because in nature, access to women equals legacy. Here's the hard math. Throughout most of human history, about 80% of women reproduced, but only 40% of men did. That means more than half of all men were biologically filtered out. So men evolved to compete, to stand out, to impress, to serve. And that instinct still drives us today. That's why modern men work 60 hours a week. Why? They bend their morals, why they buy luxury they can't afford. All to gain what their ancestors once fought and died for, her attention. But here's the catch. That ancient drive, once essential for survival, now enslaves him in a world where beauty is everywhere, but meaning is rare. The religion of romance. Now add this third layer, the modern myth of romantic salvation. We no longer pray to the old gods, but we do worship the one. We believe she's out there, that perfect woman, the one who will heal our pain, complete our soul, and love us unconditionally. But that belief, it's not noble, it's not romantic, it's dangerous. Because when you believe she's the one, you stop protecting yourself. You excuse betrayal. You overlook disrespect. You give up your boundaries just to keep her close. And when she leaves, or when she finally shows her real self, you don't just lose a partner. You lose your identity. That's not love. That's self-erasure. And it's happening to millions of men every day. Culture. The final layer of the illusion modern media doesn't just reflect reality, it rewrites it. Turn on a movie, watch a commercial, listen to a pop song. What do you see? The worship of the feminine. She is always the prize, the healer, the perfect, strong, independent ideal who needs no man, but somehow always ends up with one who gives her everything. She's portrayed as flawless, as righteous, as a force of emotional wisdom and untouchable beauty. And what about him? If the man doesn't win her, he's a loser. If he walks away, he's cold. If he questions her nature, he's labeled bitter, toxic, broken. This is how media has reprogrammed male desire. Not toward strength, not toward purpose, not even toward brotherhood, but toward validation, through female approval. It's not just subtle manipulation, it's mass hypnosis. And the most tragic part? Most men are so deep in the dream, they can't even tell they're asleep. Still think this is just theory? Let's look at history. Let's talk about a man who shaped the fate of empires, and yet couldn't control his own heart. The case of Napoleon and Josephine, Napoleon Bonaparte, a man who conquered half of Europe. A military genius, a man feared by kings, and yet he was emotionally enslaved by one woman, Josephine. Despite her endless affairs, despite her indifference, despite her coldness, Napoleon kept writing her love letters, kept chasing her approval, kept fighting wars with her name on his lips. This titan of conquest lost battles and lost his sanity, not to armies, but to an illusion. Not because Josephine was evil, but because Napoleon projected power onto beauty. He forgot that even the most glorious rose still hides thorns. Let's be clear. Women are not evil. They are not monsters. They are not manipulating you out of cruelty. They are responding to instinct, just like you are. But here's the real danger. When men fail to understand this dance, when they misread female behavior through the lens of fairy tale fantasy, they destroy themselves trying to earn a kind of love that was never meant to be earned. They give and give and give until there's nothing left but a hollow man with a broken dream. So how do you escape? You stop worshiping. You stop projecting. You kill the illusion before it kills you. You look at her beauty, but not as salvation. You hear her words, but not as gospel. You accept her nature, but don't build your life around it. When you do this, you break the spell. You reclaim your mind. You rebuild your instincts. You become a man of clarity in a world drowning in delusion. Schopenhauer once wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and when it comes to love and desire, that solitude, that clarity, that brutal awareness might be the only thing that saves you." Arthur Schopenhauer did not believe in romantic love. At least not in the way you were taught to. He never wrote sonnets about soulmates. He never daydreamed about unconditional love. Instead, he tore the mask off and exposed the cold machinery behind the most intoxicating feeling in the world. He called love the ultimate deception of the will. A man believes he's pursuing happiness, but he's not. He's being used. Used by what? Not by her, not even by society, but by something deeper, by nature, by biology, by the will of the species. Not for your personal joy, but for its survival. The will behind the curtain. Nature doesn't care about your dreams. It doesn't care how noble, how poetic, or how sincere your love feels. It only cares about one thing: reproduction. That beautiful, emotional, heart-wrenching thing we call love. Schopenhauer called it something else entirely: the cunning trick of nature. A grand illusion, crafted not for your happiness, but to enslave men and women into serving the will of life. You didn't choose to fall in love. You were pushed. You thought you fell for her laugh, for her presence, for the way she made you feel, safe or seen. But according to Schopenhauer, no, you fell because the will recognized her genetic value. You were drawn to her because her body signaled fertility, because her facial symmetry triggered ancient, pre-civilized instincts, because her scent activated parts of your brain older than language itself. It wasn't romance. It was biology, wearing the mask of magic. And what makes this illusion so brutal? It feels real. It hijacks your mind. You write her poetry. You make sacrifices. You dream, you chase, you fight. But from nature's perspective, you're just a pawn executing code. Why she becomes the obsession. Have you ever noticed how falling in love makes you irrational? How you can't stop thinking about her? How her voice, her validation, her absence consumes your thoughts? That's not weakness, that's design. The lover is never free. Schopenhauer wrote, "He is driven not by choice, but by command." You don't love her because she's uniquely special. You love her because nature needs you to. Because if men didn't fall obsessively in love, if they didn't chase, suffer, sacrifice, the species wouldn't survive. So evolution created a drug, a psychological cocktail so potent, it overrides your logic. It drowns your ambition. It strips your dignity. We call it love. But Schopenhauer saw it for what it really is, nature's leash. The truth behind the weaker sex. Schopenhauer is infamous for calling women the weaker sex. And modern ears hear that and recoil, calling it misogyny, but they miss the point entirely. He wasn't insulting women, he was describing nature's division of power. Men are biologically the more expendable sex, stronger physically, yes, but evolutionarily disposable. Men were shaped by nature to be hunters, fighters, builders, the ones who take risks, the ones who die first. Women, on the other hand, were shaped to conserve, to select, to test. They were built to carry life, and because of that, nature made them selective, defensive, and cunning. So when a woman pulls away, when she suddenly loses interest the moment you start chasing, when she uses her beauty to challenge your composure, that's not cruelty, that's evolution. She is filtering, she is testing, she is following a program that has worked for thousands of years. Only the strongest, most emotionally grounded men pass the test. Why romantic attachment is so dangerous? So why did Schopenhauer warn men to avoid love entirely? Because he saw what it does to them. Love blinds, love breaks, love consumes. Men have sacrificed entire kingdoms for women who never asked. They've abandoned missions, betrayed friends, even destroyed themselves, all in the name of romantic obsession. But here's what Schopenhauer believed to be true. A man is only truly free when he stands beyond the reach of desire. And romantic desire, especially the kind that's unchecked, idealized, and projected, is the most dangerous chain of all. Why? Because it doesn't feel like a chain. It feels like salvation, until it's far too late. The noble lie? When love becomes a program, love feels like salvation, until it's too late. Here's the brutal truth. Love, as we know it, is not noble. It's not divine. It's not a reward for being good or loyal or kind. Love is a mechanism, a system, a biological program that uses emotion to enforce survival. Once you understand this, once you realize that butterflies, obsession, and heartbreak are all features of the trap, you stop being a victim. Yes, you can still feel love. Yes, beauty can still move you, but you'll never again be enslaved by it. Most men spend their entire lives worshipping a lie. They chase women, hoping to find meaning. They offer themselves on the altar of romance, begging to be chosen. But once you understand Schopenhauer, once you see love not as a blessing but as a design, you don't hate women. You don't withdraw from life. You simply become free. You see her beauty, but not as truth. You feel desire, but don't obey it. You understand the game and choose your own terms. This is the beginning of masculine clarity, of power, of peace. Schopenhauer once smirked and said, "To marry is to have one's rights and double one's duties." Not because he despised love, but because he understood it. You've been lied to by movies, by songs, by stories passed down by men who didn't know better. You were told the greatest mission in life was to win her heart, to be chosen, to be loved, to be enough for her. But here's the truth. You were never meant to chase her. You were meant to become him. The man who doesn't beg, the man who doesn't break, the man who cannot be owned. Once you see what Schopenhauer saw, that love isn't sacred, it's strategic. The spell begins to fade. Her smile loses its power. Her silence no longer scares you. Her distance no longer defines you. Not because you've grown cold, not because you've stopped feeling, but because you've finally seen the mechanism. You stop interpreting emotion as command. You begin to see it as signal. You stop mistaking attraction for truth. You stop believing your worth depends on her attention. You were the flame, not the moth. All your life, you were taught to orbit her, to win her, to impress her, to build your story around her. But what if she was never the center? What if you were? When undistracted by beauty, the masculine spirit builds empires. It writes books. It fights wars. It shapes the world. But when it becomes hypnotized by attraction, it collapses, like Samson in the lap of Delilah, like kings who burned their kingdoms for a kiss. They weren't weak men, they were just blind. Redirection is power. The greatest men in history didn't suppress their desire, they redirected it. Leonardo da Vinci never married. Nietzsche died alone. Schopenhauer walked untouched by romance's leash, so he could see the world with brutal clarity. Purpose over pleasure, respect over validation. This doesn't mean you reject love. It means you no longer depend on it. You no longer need it to feel whole. You start chasing purpose instead of pleasure. You begin choosing freedom over comfort. You value respect more than fleeting validation. Because tell me, what does it matter if she chooses you? If you haven't even chosen yourself? Every man has a fire inside him, but most let it die, snuffed out by rejection, extinguished by heartbreak, smothered by trying too hard to be enough for someone else. But the awakened man, he fans that fire. He uses solitude as fuel. He uses discomfort as sharpening stone. He lets disappointment reveal direction. He doesn't ask, "Why doesn't she love me?" He asks, "Why did I forget my mission?" Because once your mission is clear, everything else aligns. Women notice, men respect you. But most importantly, you respect yourself. She's not the prize. She's the test. Don't hate her for being what nature made her to be. She is instinct. She is selection. She is the test, not the reward. Your enemy is not her beauty. Your enemy is your blindness to it. It's the belief that she owes you something for being a good man. She doesn't. Nature doesn't deal in fairness. It deals in strategy. And your freedom begins the moment you stop demanding fairness and start building power. You were not born to be liked. You were born to be unshakable. A man who doesn't flinch when she blinks differently, who doesn't collapse when she pulls away, who doesn't beg for attention because he already owns his identity. That's the man who becomes untouchable, not because he's heartless, but because he's anchored. The truth she'll never say. Here's what no one tells you. She was never focused on your feelings. She was watching your frame, your energy, your posture, your power. Because nature doesn't select for kindness, it selects for strength. And when you become the man you were meant to be, you don't chase women. They orbit you like stars around gravity, because deep down, nature doesn't worship beauty. It honors power. So remember, she was never the prize. She was the mirror, the test, the illusion. You are the prize. You, when you're rooted in truth. When your purpose leads, not your desire, let them call you cold. Let them say you don't understand love. Let them mock your distance and smile. Because you know something they don't. That love is real, but not the way they think. Because freedom is love's higher form, and truth is stronger than beauty. And once you see clearly, you don't fall again. You rise.